And welcome back to Comment Frontline, everybody. I am Brant Feller, aka the Gonzo Goose, back with you for the final Heroes Reborn review. This is episode 13, Project Reborn is the title of the episode, and this is the series finale for Heroes Reborn, not for the Heroes franchise. Let me be clear on that. There's been a lot of talk going on. Oh, it was canceled. Oh, it was never supposed to be a mini series, but they, yada yada yada, because it did end on a cliffhanger. We'll get to all that. I want to start this off by saying Tim Crean made a statement that and NBC backed it up, that this particular series was always planned for 13 episodes, and that if there were future stories to tell, that they would be told in another volume, another set of stories later on down the line. It would not be called Heroes Reborn, it would be called something else. So if you want to look at it that way, then this volume of Heroes was called Heroes Reborn, and then the next one would be called something else. They did leave it open-ended. There's a lot of people clamoring for them to take it to Netflix or something. I don't know how the ratings did for this. I don't follow that as closely anymore. So I don't know if this was a success for NBC, if they considered it a success, if this was something that they might revisit every few years, which would be cool, but we'll just have to see. But we'll get into how the open-endedness uh, leads to a possible future story later on. So, all right, as far as finales go, first an overview, and then I'll recap it a little bit, and I'll try to stay a little bit non-spoilers, but some things I'm going to have to spoil. So if you guys have not seen it yet, you'll definitely want to go watch it before you watch this entire review. So overall, my thoughts on this finale were it was a bit lackluster. Parts of it, there were a few, maybe just a couple of really good parts in the finale, and then there were some things that made you scratch your head and be like, couldn't they have done it this way? Why did they have to do it that way? Or whatever. And then there were the aggravating parts of it as well. So as far as a season finale, series finale, volume finale, whatever you want to call this, goes, I thought it was a little weak, and they probably could have used more time to flesh it out, which has been the whole case of this entire series, is that they really needed a full season to really flesh the story out, in my personal opinion. Some people would disagree. Aside from that, I would counter even my own statement there by saying if they had cut some of the fat, like the whole Carlos story, we could have done without that entire story and given that time to other more important characters, because as we learned in this finale, he really was kind of a non-issue character. He barely mattered in the entire series, and that's kind of aggravating. And we see that Micah didn't really matter that much either. So we'll get to that. That's one of my nitpicks about it. All right, so here we go with the recap of the episode. I'm gonna try to. I'll be jumping around here, trying to go character by character or whatever. Um, we know that Luke and Melina and Quentin are at Gateway Community. We don't know that Phoebe is there quite yet. She ends up being there, and once everybody is taken to the future, there's nobody left there except for them, and they're kind of left behind, and she's trying to prevent the solar flare. Well, the first flare, it's coming down, and Luke convinces them to go take shelter. And this is one of the things people, I watched a couple of reviews of this, and one review was stating that it didn't really make sense why Luke was the one to go up there, and when did he learn to fly and all this stuff. And the basic premise of this whole scene was, okay, it's a redemption scene for Luke. He's done a lot of bad. He started off the show killing Evos left and right because he was grieving for his son, and then of course he killed his wife last episode. This episode, he basically is sacrificing himself, we think, to save Melina, to keep her for the second bigger flare that's coming. And so his powers are based on absorbing the sun, absorbing solar energy, and manifesting it within, and shooting a controlled blast from that absorption. So what he was doing was absorbing the solar flare, and it took every bit of him to do it. We've only seen his arm light up before, but this, it took over his whole body, like Human Torch or something, and he absorbed the entire solar flare so that it disappeared, but he disappeared with it. So did he die? Really? We saw Peter explode. That's all I'm saying. Anyway, so that's Luke's story. Luke's story is then over. Meanwhile, Tommy, of course, he's locked into Evernow, and Emily and Ren are trying to save him. And you know they're trying to get to him and everything, and they find Otomo and they find Miko. Of course, Miko doesn't have a clue who Ren is because this is the real Miko, and they wake them up. Then long story short, I don't want to spoil all of it, but Ren gets sent into the game because he was chosen by Otomo because he knows Evernow better than anyone. He's tasked to go into the game, and he gets reunited with Katana Girl, which I thought was a nice touch because he meets this real Miko and she has no clue who he is, and he's kind of falling for her. So for him to get that last hurrah with Katana Girl was pretty cool, despite what you think of the whole Evernow subplot. I thought it was interesting. Within Evernow, we learned that Tommy is basically there forever. Time works differently there. He's stuck in there, and they kind of went low budget on the flashbacks here, trying to show him, trying to unlock his memories so he can see exactly what he needs to do. It was a little weak sauce. I'm gonna be honest there. They could have done that so much better. And basically, it was just him running around a maze, and he runs into himself, and that's when we learn that Tommy has advanced his powers far beyond what Hero could even do, which they alluded to earlier in the series. So that's kind of what happens with Tommy. They finally break him out, and he confronts Erica. Erica had gone, of course, to the future with all the other 12,000, and they're in the future now, and they're kind of observing their new habitat and everything, and she's there to face Tommy, and she's got Emily and Tommy's mom captive, and she explains to Tommy, if you go back in time, you kill all these people because none of these people will exist anymore because this future is dependent on the world being destroyed. So if you go back and save the world, then all these people are erased. And he's like, you know what? I've had billions of years or thousands of years or whatever it was in this game to hone my skills, and I can put myself in two places at one time. Okay, so Tommy becomes a deus ex machina here. It's a bit of a cheat, bit of a stretch, but he is the master of time and space after all. So he's able to do this. So he freezes time, and he's able to send everybody back to the present in order to save them all when he goes back and saves the world from the solar flare with his sister Melina. But the one of the best scenes in this episode was his scene with Erica at the end, where he's about to unfreeze time after he's already taken everybody back to the present. He and Erica are the only ones left in this future that will no longer exist. And he apparently in that game he's honed his samurai sword skills too, because with one little slice he knocks her watch off, which is how they get back to the present. And he sits there in the chair turning on the power to send everybody home. Actually, he hadn't sent everybody home yet. He was turning it on to send everybody home so their watches would activate and they would go back. And he phases back in, or he unfreezes time, and she realizes what happened, and she goes, no, and she's the only one left, so she ceases to exist completely, which I thought was very poetic. It was very done, and this actress is really good at playing this kind of role, and she really sold this. So I was happiest by this moment here. I liked the touch with Ren and Katana Girl. That was nice. This was really good. We learn once he does go back in time that he and Melina, they have to hold hands, they have to combine, but what we didn't know was that actually kills him, that hurts him. He had to go back in time again and watch himself as a kid and figure out what it was, and they actually needed a conduit. So we've been wondering where Noah has been all this time. He was pulled out of that wreck, and we've not seen him since. So now we know what happened was Tommy went back, grabbed him, showed him this scene from his childhood, so he could be the one to sacrifice himself, be their conduit, because whoever's the conduit dies. So he had to be the conduit to shoot up the blast that would dissipate. Well, not really dissipate, but that's what we thought. The solar flare, it basically created a shield or a barrier around the Earth so that the solar flare would bounce off of it and go around it, thus saving the world. So save the father of the cheerleader, save the world this time. It kind of fits because that's kind of been a theme in the entire Heroes Reborn series was what's happened before happens again kind of thing. It's like an endless circle, and that's the way Heroes was too, because it was like all these people with powers. It's happened before this eclipse and these particular powers, and there's certain power sets that repeat over time, and they all have that same role to play in a way, and it's kind of progressing it that way, and I don't know, there's a poetry to the way that it comes together, even if you don't buy it. I didn't mind that. Side story: Carlos and Farah. Carlos takes Farah to a hospital. He's got some medvac training, so with the help of his nephew who can phase through things, they get the bullet out, save her life. She's fine. Micah, one of the original characters from Heroes, who was a pretty big character back then, pretty big subplot in this whole thing. He's Hero Truther. He is seen maybe 2 minutes out of this entire episode and has one tiny little 3-word line or something. We do now, or something like that, when he turns the power on. And then he's just standing there in the hospital. Doesn't have any medical training himself, but when people start coming in needing medical attention, he's like, when Carlos says, we need to stay here and help these people, he's like, so Micah was like a complete non-issue in this whole series, and it was a complete waste of this actor, a complete waste of this character, and I was really kind of disappointed by the way that they handled Micah and throughout this whole thing. That was one of the biggest disappointments. And Carlos was such a non-character that he just did not even matter to anything. He was just there to be there, and it took away from everybody else. It was just, I don't understand that storytelling choice. So, whatever. 3 months later, Quentin, for some reason, is arrested. We don't know if it's because of his connection to Renatus, if it's because he killed his sister. By the way, that happened. Phoebe had taken hold of Melina and was choking her with this power, and he has to make the choice after a very long, drawn-out decision-making, trying to plead with her, this completely unredeemable character. He shoots her, and she falls out a conveniently open window to her death. So I don't know if it was because he killed her, because of his connection with Renatus, but he becomes our narrator and tells how the heroes are ordinary people. They're you and me, but they just want to be left alone, but they go out and save the world, and they don't want anything. They don't, and it was like, okay, fine. So as the series ends, we see Rin is getting trained with Miko and Automo and Kendo. So I thought that was pretty cool. He's getting to know the real Miko, and so if there are future stories, he could be a major character now. That's cool, because he's one of my favorite characters in this whole series. We see Tommy is working at the ice cream parlor with Emily, and he's doing the origami cranes, which is a nice touch and a nice nod to Hero and Charlie, so from the previous series. So that's a nice touch. We also, in this episode, Tommy finally calls himself Nathan. He said, "My name is Nathan," so he accepts that name and that identity, and that's who he is now. And Melina, she is going to Union Wells High School, where her mother went. So she's in school now. At these separate places, both twins get a tarot card, and it's a twin card. Gemini card is what Melina got. I can't remember if Tommy got the same one, or if he got, it looked like it said destruction or something like that. I don't know. But Melina gets in the car with her grandmother, Angela, and or I guess it would be her great grandmother, and shows her card, and she's like, I know what this is. It's your father, basically, your father. And so they've left this open door that eventually, if they decide to tell future stories, whoever Melina and Nathan's real father is, Claire's boyfriend, husband, whatever, whoever this person is watching them, and he's not going to let things lie, and possibly he's this great evil because Angela seemed very concerned. So did she hook up with the villain? We don't know. We don't know what's going on here, but it leaves the door open for future stories. Okay, like I said, overall, lackluster ending, but a lot of poetic moments here. I kind of like and dislike the open door. I dislike it because I would have preferred, because we don't know for a fact that we're getting some kind of future story down the line, that they would have wrapped this up, and if they were going to introduce another subplot like this, another tease, that they had done it in a web series when they knew for sure they were getting another series later on. I think I would have preferred it that way, so we would have closure here, and we did get some closure here. This particular story is wrapped, but now these characters' lives go on in a new mystery that we just do not get to see, possibly. So that aggravates me, but at the same time, it leaves the door open for more heroes, which I love, because overall, throughout this entire series, I enjoyed it. There were ups and downs, there were missteps, and there were things I could have lived without, but through and through, it did feel like a Heroes series to me. It felt like a continuation to me, and it felt like a passing the torch to me. And I think gradually some of these characters really appealed to me. I really liked the character of Luke throughout the whole thing. I loved that he went through this whole redemption phase, and I loved that he reached that ultimate goal of, penance. And I appreciated the poetry in that. I appreciated the poetry with Erica, where, even though they did a really poor job of giving her any redeeming factors till the very end, when we did see that, it still didn't change the fact that she was this evil person that was not going to stop, and the only way to stop her was to have her cease to exist in such a dramatic and powerful way. And that was a really positive for this episode and the series. Her character, she was a character I loved to hate. She was very good. And I loved her character throughout the series as well. Ren, again, Ren and Katana Girl, I actually really liked Ren more than Katana Girl. But I liked that he had a larger role to play throughout this whole thing. And Tommy kind of grew on me. Melina grew on me as well, once I got to know her. And I really like Emily, which is Tommy's girlfriend. So, overall, I kind of, for me, Heroes Reborn overall was an enjoyable experience. Um, Even, albeit a little bit rushed and a little bit compacted, and in places stretched out with characters that didn't matter. But that was the way that the original Heroes series was as well. So it's just a flaw in this kind of story, I guess, in this kind of genre of time travel and all this stuff folding onto it. There's a lot of moving parts here that you're not going to get everything right. And I think personally, for me, that this series got more right than they got wrong, and so I enjoyed it. This finale, however, was about 50-50. So I'm going to give this finale, as a finale, I'm going to give it like, I'm just going to go midline, 3 out of 5. It could have been so much better, but there were a lot of great touchstones in it. So that's my final rambled, long explanation. If you want to hear even more about my thoughts about the entire series, you can check us out on Media Madness on Monday, as Kat, Jay, myself, and possibly one other guest talk about the entire series of Heroes Reborn. And you can check out all my other reviews, because I did review the entire series here on Comic Frontline. You can check that out. And for all my other stuff, you can check out lastnumberpress.com, comicfrontline.com, of course, zone4podcast.com, and Where's My Tale on YouTube. It's tinyurl.com/whereismytale, and we'll actually have our December countdown up on that very soon. But as far as Heroes go, I know I promised early on in these reviews that I was going to recap like the previous series. I never got around to that, and I apologize. If anything else Heroes comes up in the future, I will try to jump back and kind of do an overview of everything at that point, because I would like to continue reviewing Heroes content if it comes available. So stay tuned for that, and stay tuned for everything else here on the channel. And until next time, guys, thanks for watching. Hope you guys have enjoyed my reviews. I'd love to hear your comments below of what you thought about this episode, this finale, and the series as a whole. But until next time, thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Bye, guys.